Do you like history? Do you like dinosaurs? Do you like football? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to planet Eert. Eert is what a Western Pennsylvania accent does to the word Earth. And Eert is your home. It's the third rock from the sun. If you didn't know that, just look around, smile, pretend you knew the whole time, right? Well, I have this long, complicated Greek name that's very hard to say and very hard to spell, so you just call me Mr. H because that's what everybody in class calls me. I do make sure, however, that everything is spelled correctly on the direct deposit forms, right? Got to keep our priorities straight. Now, I'm kind of a generalist. I'm the closest thing to a generalist in history you're ever going to find. But my home era is ancient Greece. With a crazy Greek name like mine, no big surprise. And I first learned about ancient Greece in that most hallowed of academic institutions, the back of my dad's pizza shop. And of course, in between orders for pizza and spaghetti, we always talked about the Peloponnesian War. Now, why is the Peloponnesian War so exciting? Because it's ancient Greece's version of a world war. Athens taking on Sparta in a 27-year slugfest of mayhem and slaughter because hoplite warfare is never very pretty. Why are we starting off with this one? Because it's my favorite era. Plus, it's also important to our lovely year of 2023, something called the Thucydides Trap. Now, we know about the Peloponnesian War because of a guy named Thucydides who wrote about it from day one until close to the end when he just sort of gave up on it or died or decided to restore in 89 dots, and we're not really sure. But it details the whole story of Athens and Sparta. And the reason this war started, he writes it there in 3.2, the fear the rise of Athens engendered in Sparta. The war started when Corcyra and Corinth got into it. Corcyra calls in Athens, Corinth calls in Sparta, and off we go. Sparta, well aware of empires rising and falling, was trying to avoid the falling bit. Athens is the rising power. So think of it this way. Sparta's number one, Athens number two, and number three in the standings is probably Corinth. And you see this happen over and over and over. Number one teams up with number three to take out number two when number two is getting too close. Now, don't take my word for it. Hey, it's been confirmed by Harvard, right? Graham Allison. He wrote a book, Destined for War, and he thinks that America and China in our nice civilized 21st century is falling into the Thucydides trap. America, number one at the moment, is kind of worried about the rise of China, and this historically leads to, shall we say, interesting times. Now, this is a phenomenon that our friend Allison here has documented at least 26 times in his book. We're not going to go through all 26 of them, but we can hit some of the highlights. Hey, remember France and Britain slugging it out from the 1700s all the way up to the Napoleonic War? Yeah, there's an example right there for you. Britain's on top. France is the rising power, and they slug it out. Who's number three? Well, considering revolutionary France declared war on all of Europe, I guess you can pick anybody. So let's go with Russia. So number one and number three take on number two. Britain and Russia taking on France. Britain's going to win. So there it is. They're worried about somebody trying to overtake them, and here we go. Later on in the century, Britain's still on top, and guess who the new challenger is? It's Germany. Who's number three, you think? Well, weirdly enough, it's France, because Germany, industrial capacity, after it unified in 1870, just allowed it to skyrocket right up the standings. So suddenly Germany is challenging Britain for number one. So inevitably, we get the First World War. And instead of this glorious, colorful fight in the open, everybody slugging it out like a Lord of the Rings, it turns into a 4-year slop through the mud over here, complete with rats, rotting flesh, and influenza at the end. And Britain sort of won at the end. And I say sort of because you take a look at that picture, and believe me, man, there's just varying degrees of defeat. But hey, Britain's on top when it's all over. Germany's crashing down to the bottom of the standings again. But nah, can't you really say anybody won, because 20 years later, they go at it again for round two in the Second World War, which is even worse than the first. Britain number one, Germany number two, France number three. We know how this one ended up. Now, Britain may have won the war, but they really lost the race for, I don't know, civilization or something, because they are so badly weakened. We have two new players on the block. That's right. The United States and the Soviet Union. Two continental-sized countries that Britain, Germany, and France combined cannot even think of even matching, right? And we see this Thucydides trap again. The United States, with 50% of the world's industrial capacity at the time, is number one. The Soviet Union, taking some serious damage in the Second World War, is clearing out the cobwebs, but they're going to be number two. As for number three, let's just say it's NATO. Strangely enough, this never turns into an actual shooting war. U.S. and Soviet forces never shoot at each other, at least not very much, and if they did, it was something very small and very classified that we're not going to find out about. Yeah, right. The internet these days, you can find anything. But when all was said and done, the Soviet Union fell apart, United States came out on top, and the U.S. is still on top as of the year of our Lord 2023 AD. But everyone thinks that when they win the great struggle, it's all over. It's the end of history. History never ends, man. Long as there are human beings around, history will not end. You win the Super Bowl, everybody comes after defending champion. And here in our nice civilized 21st century, the United States is number one, China is number two, and Russia is number three, though given their performance in Ukraine lately, they might be sliding down the standings, but we're going to leave them there for right now. Now, what makes the 21st century different, as you've learned, number one teams up with number three to fight number two. But for some reason here in the 21st century, it appears number two and number three are fighting against number one. Some people argue that China is actually number one, but I give this to you, gentle listener. China can't make it across to Taiwan, whereas anything that floats doesn't sink at the sufferance of the U.S. Navy. So until you make that jump across to Taiwan, China, you're still number two. Now, why is there a conflict with China on the horizon, you think? People say it's economics. People say it's the Thucydides trap. It could be this line right here. You see this line, red and yellow? As you've noticed, to the east of that line, 94% of China lives there, and to the west of the line, only 6% of the population is there. And it comes down to rainfall. You've got 1.3 billion people crammed into the eastern one-third of the nation, and not a lot of arable land out there to the west. So China needs resources, and China is in competition with a lot of people for resources, including the United States. In order to get to the resources, they need unfettered access, they need a navy, they need a big navy. There's another big navy sitting in the way. U.S. Navy, Chinese Navy, see where it's coming from? I'm sorry, People's Liberation Army Naval Branch. So, doesn't matter how long this stuff lasts. Everything from the beginning comes all the way to the present. What you did yesterday affects today. What's today affects tomorrow. If you don't believe me, tell your girlfriend she has gray hair. And believe me, your tomorrow will be affected. Hey, what's your favorite dinosaur? A lot of people say Dimetrodon. Well, I got news for you, man. Dimetrodon is not a dinosaur. Yeah, it looks scaly. It's got teeth. It probably has bad breath and a vicious disposition. It's actually a really cool looking animal. It's my favorite Paleozoic animal, to be honest with you. But it is not a dinosaur. That's why I have no idea why it showed up in Jurassic Park, and they don't live underground. Furthermore, not only did it not live in the Jurassic period, it didn't even live in the Mesozoic era. But don't take my word for it. Hey, hear it from Dimetrodon itself. I am not a dinosaur. And I don't know what's up with the British. As much as I like the British, Dimetrodon is not how you say this. Nonetheless, Dimetrodon, as cool as it is not a dinosaur. It's one of my pet peeves. Kind of like Baltimore Raven fans. Now, how do we know it's not a dinosaur? Well, there's two arguments you can use if you ever find yourself in a barbed over this. One is the temporal opening behind the eye socket. This makes this not a dinosaur. In fact, it's barely a reptile. It's closely related to us, as a matter of fact. Yeah, hard to believe. The temporal opening makes it a synapsid, which is basically a mammal-like reptile. So, on our way to Homo sapiens, it starts there. But if you can't remember all that, remember this. It didn't even live in the same era. Dinosaurs are in the Mesozoic. See down there, Paleozoic? Permian, that's where you find Dimetrodon. Dimetrodon, not Dimotrodon. Some people argue about the placement of the legs as well. We're not sure if it's splayed out like an alligator or if the legs are underneath the trunk of the animal. Either way, we think this thing can move pretty fast, about 10 feet long, I don't know, 600-700 pounds. Did it, run forward like a lion, or was it doing the side-to-side thing? We see the footprints, and weirdly enough, you'd think it'd be obvious, but we can't really tell. A lot of people think it's the side-to-side, but, it's still up for debate. And if you know anything about it, hey, tell me about it in the comments. Hey, let's move on to America's greatest sport, waged across the gridiron by some of the most elite athletes in the world. Pictured here, right? That easily looks like Pennsylvania versus Ohio kind of game of some kind. That's the original XFL football, by the way, that he's grabbing onto. And speaking of the XFL, hey, how do you not like the XFL, man? I think it is awesome. Spring football is amazing. I think it's got a future. I wish the crowds were a little bit bigger, but, they're getting there. You got to start someplace. And the thing I like about the XFL in 2023 is it doesn't feel like a new league. It feels like they just picked up from 2020 before the whole COVID thing hit, and they're just running with it. They've redesigned some of the uniforms. I think they actually look better than they did back then. I don't like that weird split helmet Houston has. Something I just don't like. And I'm not sure why the Guardians are sitting in Orlando, but there they are. And Tampa Vipers end up moving out to Vegas, which is fine too. That's my team, the Vegas Vipers, because Pittsburgh doesn't have one. And I really like it. Some of the rules are kind of strange with the kickoffs to eliminate injuries, and of course there's no such thing as an extra point in the XFL. So they're getting ready for their championship game, and this is going to be a good one because we've got the strongest team, DC, the DC Defenders, going up against the Arlington Renegades, who, let's face it, I'm kind of surprised they're there. They went 4-6, upset Houston in the playoffs, and they're in San Antonio ready to go toe-to-toe with DC. They met each other one time before, as you can see, and they did not part as friends, as you can see. And, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Dallas and Washington in the NFL. Well, as you guessed, DC actually won that game, so maybe Arlington's thinking some kind of revenge. On the other hand, DC is just really good. And to be honest with you, not that I'm encouraging gambling or anything, but take DC in the points. Now, spring football is awesome. What I really love about spring football, it gives these guys a chance when they probably wouldn't have a chance in the NFL. Maybe these guys move up. Maybe they stay in the XFL, which I hope lasts forever. And if they don't stay in the XFL, hey, there's always the USFL. That's right. We got a second spring league, and it works out fantastic. They resurrected it, in name anyway, from the 1980s version of this, the original spring football league. And yeah, it's awesome. Pittsburgh has a team. Pittsburgh Maulers. Too bad we stink. But hey, they're there. They exist as league is in year 2. Birmingham won last year the championship over Philadelphia. So far this year, it's looking like New Orleans running away in the South Division. The whole North is kind of jumbled. Maybe Michigan. We'll see how it goes there. What I really like about this league, it's closer to the NFL rules, extra points and the same kind of kickoffs. And Pittsburgh has a team in it. That's right, the Pittsburgh Maulers, 1-9 last year, 1-4 so far. But I am very happy they changed the uniforms, because last year, in homage to their 80s look, they had these strange purple and orange uniforms. I had to go black and gold, so it looks like Pittsburgh. Good idea. Too bad we still stink, but at least we look really good out on the field. I'll give them that. My only real argument with the USFL is this hub city thing. It's really strange. Last year they played all their games in Birmingham, and you didn't have any real attendance because, it's Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia is kind of a hard sell in Birmingham. It's just not going to happen. But at least this year, some of these guys are playing in their home markets. Michigan Panthers playing in Detroit. Birmingham, of course, down in Birmingham. Memphis is playing in West Tennessee. And my Maulers are playing in Canton, Ohio, which isn't Pittsburgh, but it's about an hour away. So at least we're getting closer. and I really look forward to seeing them at Acrisure Stadium. I think it just looks like it's made for it. It's going to really work out. Now, the XFL tends to start earlier than the USFL, and that's okay, but I really wish they would sync up their schedule a little bit, start at the same time, end at the same time, have their playoffs and champions, and have a spring football Super Bowl. I guess they kind of negotiate on the rules there a little bit. Maybe a traditional kickoff to start, and then the XFL rules as the game goes along. And if you don't want any extra points, that's fine too. Find somewhere in the middle. But that would think would be really cool. Be a rating bonanza, and I'm going to send a letter to both leagues right now, right after I get off the air. So hey, I hope you've had a great time, because I certainly have. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And hey, I'll see you again next week. Have a great day.